Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Urso, the CEO of ActivePure Technologies. Dr. Birx, I'd like to thank you for joining us as our Chief Medical and Science Advisor. It's such an honor, and we're so excited to have you and to learn and have you share with us why you believe ActivePure is an essential part of any solution to safely get America back to work, back to school, and back to life as it should be lived. Dr. Birx, you've had a stellar career, and I'd love for you to share with us um, why you were attracted to the medical profession and career. Perhaps you could share that a little
Well, Joe, thank you. It's great to be here and to be with you virtually as we all work through the COVID pandemic together. That's a long answer, but I'll give you the Reader Digest version. I was a chemistry and math major and minor at Houghton College, and really doing research already as an undergraduate student, and working in organic chemistry and love physical chemistry. And so I was talking to Kodak about working for them to work on a better green dye, because back in the day, those green dyes over time would turn yellow. And I thought, wow, I could spend a whole career keeping grass from turning yellow, but maybe I should really go to do research and medicine and really do something that can contribute to the health of America. So switch gears, took my what we call the medical boards, applied to medical school, and the rest is history.
bit. Dr. Birx, you are known across the world, and I certainly am one of the believers that you led the stop of the spread of AIDS pandemic with the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief. It certainly has been one of the most significant global health programs ever. Can you share a little bit of your experience with that?
Yeah, so I was originally working on HIV vaccines and taking care of individuals with HIV in the military, and was doing a large clinical trial and starting a very large phase 3 trial in the Asia region, and realized that we would have to do a series of trials to really show the impact of the different vaccines that we were working on. And so turned my attention to Africa in 1998. And so actually worked on the continent doing research from that time onward. And you can't imagine the devastation in sub-Saharan Africa. Whole families, whole communities spent weekends doing funerals. And to be able to work on science and technology and this innovation of bringing vaccines to people and that critical research, and at the same time watching young family members die every day, and moms die and dads die and school teachers die, and people coming to the clinic by the wheelbarrow load, and the matrons sending them away because there really wasn't any treatment there. And to have President Bush announce this in 2003, I remember where I was on the continent, and I heard the announcement, and I flew home immediately because that time I was in the military and I was worried that the Army wouldn't be included in this critical plan. But I went and met with Joe O'Neill in the White House, and he included the military. And I can't tell you how incredible it was to be able to combine critical research with clinical care and to be able to save communities. And we went from saving lives and changing it from death and despair to hope and vibrancy over the next decade, and then realized that we could really take that next step and talk about controlling the pandemic. And I think that that taught me that with data and science, you can make what many people think is impossible possible. And you just have to stay focused and constantly be working towards that single goal, and you can make an incredible impact. And so today across the continent, there are 10 countries that have levels of HIV incidence now to what it was in the early 90s, before the pandemic really gained steam. And so to really see these countries capable of controlling the pandemic through working both, of course, with governments, but also at the community level with civil society. And that's been really, it's been a gift to work on HIV, TB, and to really transform and use American taxpayer dollars to make such an incredible difference and be talking about controlling a pandemic without a vaccine. I mean, we have a vaccine for COVID now, but the progress we made in sub-Saharan Africa was without a vaccine.
Well, Dr. Birx, as an American and a global citizen, I'm so grateful for the work you've done, the transformational work that you've done, and the dedication and devotion you've had to public service. Without you and folks like you, I can't imagine where we'd be today. You're now entering the private sector. Can you share with us a little bit of how your new role with us fits into your goals and your dedicated life?
Yeah, so let me just talk about the private sector, because sometimes people in the public sector don't really appreciate what the private sector can bring. And I really, over the last 5 years at PEPFAR, we really intentionally worked with the private sector. We wouldn't be where we are today with decreasing incidence in young women if we hadn't been working with Johnson and Johnson and Girl FX and Vive and Gilead, who really came together. We had thorny problems that we were dealing with, and they had solutions for us. And really worked with us, really out of the goodness of their heart, to bring their intellect and their solutions. And so I think that's really the compassion and passion that you bring through ActivePure, really looking what the issues were. And the issues were from the very beginning of the company of how to make indoor air safe. And I think what you did to really study that and get FDA approval for your product in hospitals to really decrease some of these really tragic infections that occur in hospitals, and then really realizing that that could transform public and private spaces indoors. And I think what I've learned through the 40 plus years in government is when you have the privilege to work with people who are science and data driven, but also passionate about what they do and are excited to come to work every day to work on that because they believe they're providing a solution to the American people. I think that's very motivating to me, to really work with people who believe in their product. And having met with your engineers, I can see that. Having met with the rest of your team, you really not only believe in the product, but believe in doing the hard work to get the science and the data and the evidence that really shows the effectiveness of the product.
Thank you, Dr. Birx. We are absolutely 100% committed and rooted in science and data and proof that can be relied on and trusted. And we're so grateful for your new leadership there with us. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your new relationship, your revisited relationship with President George W. Bush at his institute here in Dallas. Are you at liberty to share what you'll be doing with President Bush?
Yeah, so thank you. I was really looking at how I could combine the skills I really developed in the federal government, which there's a lot of change management and really ensuring your program was really having the impact that it should have. And along that entire time, I've stayed close with the Bush Institute. President Bush and Mrs. Bush continue to drive new programs. Every time, for those of you who know the history of PEPFAR, know that the original program was prevention of mother to child transmission to really save babies' lives. But the president quickly realized that having the mother die, even though the baby lived, was not the way to really save that child in the long run, that children needed their moms, and that was the birth of PEPFAR. And when he heard that young women in Africa were then dying from cervical cancer, he immediately said, while he was at the Bush Institute, we have to do something about that. So I've been privileged to both work with Jim Glassman and the President and Mrs. Bush and his team at Bush Institute while in the federal government to really bring more comprehensive programs to sub-Saharan Africa. And he remains focused on that today. He has and I'm very excited about their women's program and women's leadership, veterans programs and veterans leadership. I think it really combines a lot of my passions. So yes, I'll be working with them as a senior fellow. And it's really an exciting moment for me because of their level of commitment, both to domestic issues, but also global issues.
Congratulations on that as well. And you seem to be an amazing listener. I know in your role with the President's Coronavirus Task Force, you visited nearly every state. Was it maybe 44 or 45, visiting government officials and businesses across the country and learning from them how you could help them address their crises with this terrible pandemic. Do you think that this experience will help you with us in your new role with ActivePure? And perhaps could you comment on that?
Yeah, I think obviously I've been working globally for a long time, and the privilege to be able to reconnect with the diversity of America, our rural, our urban areas, our heartland, our northern plains states, our Rocky Mountain states. Yes, I got to 44 of them, and I was able to both meet with community as well as mayors and governors and their staff. And there were themes that I heard across the country. People worked so hard to make public space safe. And people have worked so hard to wear their mask and be in retail spaces and make it safe. But we were seeing a lot of transmission occurring in break rooms. So you would work very hard to keep safe, and then you would have to take off your mask to drink your coffee or eat your lunch or have that little sweet snack that some of us like to have in the afternoon. And I think really trying to figure out, how do we make break rooms and areas where people eat and drink. I've been privileged to be in restaurants across the United States during the pandemic. Of course, many times we chose to either do takeout or outdoor eating. But there is a need to once again be able to have people eat indoors. In North Dakota, in the late fall, when it's 2 degrees outside, it's really not conducive to any kind of outdoor dining. And I think that's why I was looking for solutions to really what people needed, both in business and in their homes, to be able to gather again as extended family. Even, we all know with these variants that this particular coronavirus could become endemic. And until the world is vaccinated, which is going to take 18 to 24 more months, this is something we all have to deal with. And I think your technology and your adaptability of the technology, and your commitment to continue to study this and make it better every day, and it's a solution that people really are interested in and need right now.
Thank you. And, I think you're aware that, speaking of break rooms, we're collaborating with the Cleveland Clinic on their break rooms and their ICU units. All of us concerned about that close quarter exposure. You've mentioned in the past cruise ships and meatpacking plants, and of course, schools and universities. Could you maybe share with our audience why you see ActivePure as being so helpful and perhaps essential to bringing people back together again?
So that's a really great question. So, in my travels, to be able to go to a lot of our food processing plants and really see that a lot of our food processing plants have housing for their workers and transport their workers in buses. And your technology being able to adapt to buses, be able to adapt to a household situation, a multi-generational or a communal living household, from our homeless to these areas where workers live and work together, really becomes a solution that many of these large plants are looking for. I think it was really tragic to hear in the schools and hospitals how people were getting infected in break rooms. And I think having this technology, we can't go a whole day without eating or drinking. And I think really knowing that this is a technology that will create that level of protection, that level of safety, and that studying that has really shown that, I think it's so important to me that people feel safe when their mask is off. And I think when I was traveling, I didn't feel safe when my mask was off. So I wore my mask every moment, except when I was in the car with Iram Zaidi, or who I was in a pod or bubble with, or in my own personal hotel room. And so I think really creating an opportunity for nursing homes to be able to have people eat together again, to be able to eat with their family members again, to be able to be in a space together and know and have that confidence that that space is safe. And if someone is asymptomatic, and is infected, that this is a technology that will provide that extra layer of protection.
Dr. Birx, you've looked at the science across all technologies that can help eliminate and destroy this horrible pathogen. You've chosen to work with us because you see it as different in so many ways. Could you comment on that, why it's so special?
I think first and foremost, you were interested in not just trapping the virus or the bacteria or the mold spores, you were interested in inactivating them. And I think that's really important to me personally, that the next step is there. And I think the other piece of it is you had already the data showing that it could be used in occupied rooms. And I think that's that's the whole point. We want to be able to be occupied and safe. And I think having a technology that can work on surfaces and the air and really also safe for people to be in the rooms while they are constantly being protected by this source of inactivation was really important to me.
So, we support all the CDC guidelines, including wearing a mask. I've heard you say to me that ActivePure is kind of like a maskless mask. Can you comment on that for the audience?
Yeah, I think we're all getting educated about how masks work now. And I really want to thank people. We know that cloth masks do work, particularly in protecting others. We know that these surgical masks that had those specific layers in them, the N95, the KN95, that specifically attract and trapped viruses. So this would be like if you had a viral zapper in the mask in addition to actually wearing the mask. And I think we are all committed to continuing to follow the CDC guidelines, but there will be times when we want and need to be with others without our mask on because we're eating or drinking. And there's a lot of important times that are shared over meals. I know throughout my career, having the ministers of health and prime ministers over for dinner changed the dialogue, and the progress we made over dinner was extraordinary. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done while we're sharing a meal. And I think what this technology does is it makes that possible again.
You're familiar with some of the data we have on reduction of sick days prior to this pandemic and the work we're doing with Dr. Sessler at the Cleveland Clinic on our double-blind study to see what impact we can have on the reduction of surgical site infections. I've heard you say in the past that you're excited about ActivePure because you see it as being disease and pathogenic agnostic. Could you comment perhaps for our audience on what that means for them as we go beyond the pandemic?
Well, I think many of us know that there are transmissions that occur in buildings. And what was interesting and important to me about the technology is that you could put it into a duct system and it would work in those ducts. And you could put it into a room and it worked on both surfaces and the air. And I think being able to show that you have that breadth of activity against mold spores to bacteria to viruses really creates power in that technology, and that you're just not trapping molds and bacteria and viruses, but you're also actually inactivating them. And I think people are looking for not only the ability to trap, but the ability to inactivate. I think technology needs to build on itself. And I think you're bringing together, yes, you can filter with your technology, but you can also directly inactivate. And I think that's what we're all looking for in that extra layer of protection.
And as we go forward, Dr. Birx, do you think that indoor spaces will be different in terms of how we look at protecting people that gather in different places? Is there a need for a significant change in how we look at those spaces and how we treat them?
I think we all at one time accepted a level of infection and outbreaks. And I think we'll look at that differently now. We won't find it acceptable to have an outbreak of Legionella, or what we call Legionnaire's disease. We won't find it acceptable to have an outbreak of Norwalk or other kind of viral pathogens on cruise ships. I think we will expect, now that we know that we have technology that can actually change that our expectation is that now when you have that technology, it gets implemented, and really being ensured that we really look at our air quality differently. I know many of you know that in Asia, they are used to masking, but masking, yes, came out of SARS, but it also came out of really protecting against air pollution. And so they were able to mask immediately when they had their outbreak of COVID-19. I think we've learned to mask now, but there are still reasons where we want to be together as a family, or we want to be at a wedding, or we want to be at a reception, or we want to be able to network again while we're drinking coffee and talking to one another. And I think what the ActivePure technology does is it provides a solution of protecting those environments so that people can feel confident in them again.
Thanks, Dr. Birx. And, as a lead, and maybe as one of our closing thoughts, you're taking on such a significant, important, and visible role with us at ActivePure. Maybe you could share with our listeners what your goals are in terms of that role and what we hope to accomplish together, bringing ActivePure technology to the marketplace and to the world.
Yeah, I'm hoping to raise its visibility through your science and data and really help to communicate that in a clear way to the American public and also to both retailers and the consumers. What I did see while I was out on the road is how dedicated the businessmen and women were to their employees. And I think to have an employee solution, whether you're working in McDonald's or Panera Bread or Wendy's, that your employees are safe and your customers are safe, and really showing how this can be a cost-effective solution for them. I think you've been a mighty but quiet science and technology company. And I think it's to really be able to explain to the American people that there are a lot of fly-by-night organizations who have come forward with their technology and made promises. There's very few that did the hard work to present their case to the FDA, to work with Texas universities, to work with the Cleveland Clinic, to really prove to the American people the functionality of the technology by using science and data. And I think the willingness to do that, obviously that's very costly. It takes time, but you've made those investments over the last decade to really come to this point. And I think it's really a time where we know that we have the need and you have a solution to meet that need.
That's terrific, Dr. Birx. Thank you. And as you are aware, we're doing all we can to not only increase awareness, but to change expectations and perhaps what people think is best to protect the people they care about most. We're working closely with ASHRAE, who's working closely with the CDC to change indoor air quality guidelines. So we have a team of ASHRAE experts, including the former president of ASHRAE and some of the current leaders of ASHRAE, helping work with us to collaborate on changing that awareness and ultimately make a huge difference on how people see our technology. And just to reiterate, we are so delighted to have scientific inquiry and in-depth questioning. And in our experience, we found that when we get a chance to talk with scientists, whether they be biochemists or epidemiologists or physicians or even industrial hygienists, we at the end of the day are able to help them understand fundamentally what the difference is in our technology. So we'll be looking for your help in helping us communicate with them because the science is so vital and important and is at the root of all we do. Our goal is to keep the promise and to really change the way people can live, the way people can gather again, and that we can live healthy lives both during and beyond this pandemic. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your trust and confidence in us.
Well, let me just say one more thing, because I'm so excited about the science. Is yes, we're talking about COVID right now and the variants and the importance of creating indoor safe space, but equally effective with flu and other respiratory diseases. And I think we're all going to think differently about spaces now. Many of us accepted that every time we went to a meeting, we would come home with a respiratory disease. I think with this technology, it says we no longer, when we travel and go to meetings and gathers, are we going to end up with an infectious disease.
Dr. Birx, thank you so much for everything. And I look forward to our next visit. Thank you.
Next visit in person after we all get vaccinated.
Really soon.